To the September Team Studio and TLCC webinar. We're back after our summer break. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Paul Delanebbia and Howard Greenberg from TLCC, and today's speakers, Pete Janzen from IBM and Ulrich Krause, who will be presenting a short update about what's new and upcoming from IBM for XPages and Domino application development, and an introduction to the model view controller pattern. My name is Courtney. I'm the inbound marketing specialist at Team Studio and your co-host today. Before we start talking about today's topic, I'll be taking a few moments to tell you who we are and what we do at Team Studio. I'll then be passing the controls to Howard Greenberg at TLCC so he can give an intro, and then we'll dive into today's topic. To get us started, I'm going to cover a few administrative points quickly. The first being to protect your privacy, the attendee list is not public. Also, all attendees are muted during this session, so you can participate by typing your questions to the speakers inside the questions section on your GoToWebinar window. We're doing Q&A at the end of this session, but you're welcome to ask your question at any point in the questions section, and we'll get to it once the formal presentation has concluded. This session is being recorded, and the link will be sent to you in a follow-up email in a few days. So a little bit about Team Studio. We've been delivering innovative developer tools and productivity tools to the Notes and Domino community since 1996, where we specialized in source code control, version management, and source code management. And we moved into the mobile application arena in 2010 with our mobile application platform, Unplugged. It gives you the ability to extend your IBM Notes apps out to mobile devices. It leverages the powerful technology of XPages and provides a native app experience for the user. And these apps have the capability to function when offline. Apps run very quickly, and development of apps is easier than ever. We're very proud to have been the recipient of 2 IBM Collaboration Solutions Awards for Unplugged in 2013 and 2014, and a finalist for a Beacon Award in 2014. This product is available on the major mobile platforms, BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. In addition to Unplugged as a platform, we provide off-the-shelf template applications like Team Studio Continuity for mobile business continuity, OneView for mobile approvals requests, and Custom Review for mobile CRM. We'd be happy to arrange a demo to show you how any of these tools work. Just contact us directly from our website. In late 2014, we launched X-Controls. This project allows you to quickly create XPages apps by dragging and dropping custom controls into your XPages. The apps you create will work on desktop browsers, mobile browsers, and Team Studio Unplugged. You can download X-Controls from the Team Studio website. Learn more at teamstudio.com/solutions/xfoundations/X-Controls. Here at Team Studio, we offer professional services that can provide you with the resources you need to meet project deadlines. Our services, such as the Developer Assistance Program, Application Upgrade Analysis, and Application Usage Auditing, can help you work more efficiently with fewer errors. Learn more from our website. For promotions and announcements from Team Studio, we're running a promotion on X-Controls Business Edition. You'll be entered to win an Apple iPad mini when you demo X-Controls Business Edition. Just click on the blue and yellow banner on the Team Studio homepage for more information on this offer. And lastly, next week, Team Studio will be at Icon UK, so if you're there, stop by our booth and say hello. I'll also be there helping run the registration, so I'd love to be able to meet some of you if you'll be attending. And now I'd like to pass the presentation over to Howard so he can talk a little bit about TLCC, and then we'll kick things off with today's topic. Over to you, Howard.
Well, thank you, Courtney, and good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everybody. Along with my partner, Paul Delanebbia, I'm going to be your co-host today in our webinar. Let me share my screen here, get that going. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Looks good.
Okay, thanks, Courtney. Okay, so I'd like to welcome everyone back, and hopefully for those of you who have been attending our webinars, you had a great summer. I know I ran into quite a few people at MWUG. It was great seeing folks who are on the other side of this these webinars that we do, as well as our TLCC customers and clients. A little bit about TLCC. I know we've been around for almost 20 years, so many of you are familiar with us. We have self-paced courses for XPages, Notes and Domino development, administration, and for users. And of course, we have a free demo course. If you're just getting started with XPages, we have a free demo course on that, as well as introduction to Notes and Domino development. Those are all self-paced. You take those courses using your Notes client and your Domino designer or Domino administrator, and do everything locally. TLCC, Paul and I also do mentoring, so a lot of our students then need a little extra help applying what they learn in the courses to their actual application development needs, so we do that. In addition to, we can come on site and do private classes at your location, or do it over the web using a GoToMeeting type of software. And finally, both Paul and I do development and consulting. Our specialty is XPages, of course. We just started this week our fall sale, so many of our most popular courses and packages are on sale, including the XPages courses, and you can go to that link and get some more information, as well as the exact savings. It's a pretty good sale. We got a lot of our XPages courses significantly discounted. Coming up in our webinar series, yours truly, myself, will be presenting a session I did at MWUG on XPages performance tips, and also getting into the XPages architecture. So we've done something similar to this. Actually, Ulrich and I did something similar in 2013, and so some of that information I'll be repeating, but I also have a case study where I go through analyzing the performance of an application and looking at ways to improve it, and kind of going step by step and looking at the performance improvements as we make changes. So so be sure to attend that one. And then on the 17th, we have a panel of, right now it looks like tentatively we have Mike McGarrell, David Weedy, Nathan Freeman, and Jesse Gallagher for our experts. And you can ask them any XPages related question you want. Each one of them will first present like a short 5-minute presentation just to kind of kick things off on a topic that they're going to pick. So we'll put all the details up on our XPages webinar link, and we'll also plan something in December. We haven't finalized that yet. And as always, you can view all our old webinars going back to, I think, 2012 at the link that's on the page here. So that is a great resource for all sorts of XPages and Notes and Domino topics. Just a reminder, the IBM Champion nominations are open, so you can nominate someone else or nominate yourself. The links are on the slides that will be handed out. And so if there's someone you think has contributed to the community by helping out in Stack Overflow and forums, and who's a good speaker, or maybe 2 people who host webinars, hint, hint, you can nominate them. And there's some more information about the IBM Champion program. That is for non-IBM employees who have contributed to the community and helped out advance the community. Okay, so before we get started asking questions, there is in your go-to webinar interface, you'll see a questions panel. You might also see a chat panel, but we will not be using that. You want to post your questions in the chat panel, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Just a reminder, or it's not really a reminder, but Pete has to run out to a meeting, so he won't be around to answer any questions, but Ulrich will be staying on at the end of the webinar to answer questions about his presentation. And we will respond to your questions verbally at the end of the webinar. Okay, so first up is Pete Janzen. Pete's going to do a short talk, just kind of, back in May, Pete did a much longer presentation on where IBM's going for Notes and Domino in terms of app dev. And then some other IBMers did some kind of more on the server and the verse side in June. And again, you can go back and watch those presentations. But Pete's going to just provide a quick update as to what might have changed since that May discussion that he did. So Pete, are you online?
I am here, Howard.
Okay, we got your first slide ready to go.
Very good. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be here to give a quick update, take a few minutes and talk about some of the things that we've accomplished here from a Domino application development perspective over the summer. And then I've got one additional tech note with some important news I think many of you would be interested in hearing about with regards to iOS and OS X. So why don't we move on to the next slide, Howard, please? If you recall, for those of you who did attend the webcast back in May, we talked about the future of Domino application development. And there we talked about some of the various enhancements that we're doing to the, the core platform, to the XPages runtime, and to Domino Designer. But we also spent a good portion talking about the investment we're making here in Bluemix, which is IBM's entry into platform as a service. And so at that point, we were saying that we were marching towards releasing a set of experimental services which would allow developers to go ahead and experience what we're working on for Bluemix. And very happy to announce that while you're at the beach in July there, that we did release this to Bluemix on July 10th. And since then, we've had a lot of developers working with the technology, giving us some good feedback. We've had some additional opportunities to do some another enablement. We did a social biz user group webcast. We've been doing some blog articles with videos, etc. So just to remind you, really, this is allowing you to realize this next generation of the kind of line of business applications you've been building on this platform for years and years and years. The thing that's nice here is that now we're taking the XPages runtime and bringing that to the Bluemix platform. But what that means is that now, as opposed to primarily focusing on leveraging the NSF as your data store, you can now also complement those applications with additional services which Bluemix makes easily available and consumable to you from their platform. So things like cognitive services from Watson, mobile services, analytics. We're working on some stuff from a social files perspective. So these are all things that you'll be able to now go ahead and work with in your applications. Really gives you an easier path to modernize your existing applications. And then one of the things that we're seeing, certainly from a number of customers, in particular large enterprise customers, they've got a significant investment in Domino applications on premises. They want to make those available, the data and services from those applications in the cloud. So through a hybrid architecture, you can now go ahead and connect your cloud-based XPages runtime to an on-premises Domino infrastructure. And so these are things that we're working on right now. If we go to the next slide, Howard, here's just a kind of a quick recap of what we have available for you today. There's a runtime, which is the XPages web development framework. We have the XPages NoSQL database, which is basically the NSF container, which you can go ahead and use to work with in a playground manner. We have a boilerplate, which easily gives you a new instance of the runtime paired with the database service, as well as a sample application. We've got a great to-do application, which is an example that you can work with there. And then to go ahead and work with it from Domino Designer, we've gone ahead and provided extensions here for building and deploying your applications to Bluemix. What's the roadmap? So I mentioned we released this on July 10th. We're moving towards a beta phase right now. We're expecting that to happen sometime in the earlier part of, let's say, of the fourth quarter, and then we're looking to GA this towards the end of the year. So that's just kind of a high-level roadmap of what we're working for. As we move forward towards beta, we'll have more definition of exactly what's going to be delivered when, etc. If we go on to the next slide, I just wanted to make you aware of how to get started. So the first thing is you can go ahead and get a Bluemix account. If you don't already have one, there's a 30-day free trial, so you can follow that link there. You want to be using Domino Designer 901. The runtime and database servers are based on Domino 901, FixPack 4. And so it's important you're using Domino Designer 901. And in conjunction, to get those designer extensions, you want to go ahead and download the latest XPages extension library from Domino Designer. Really, it will work with version 13 of the extension library, but we just did an update to both the runtime build pack and to Domino Designer extensions. So we've got a new release of the extension library out on OpenNTF. It's got some new capabilities here for working with Bluemix, as well as some other enhancements and modifications we've done to the extension library. And in addition to that, some of those were coming from the community. So another great way of how the community is participating in the XPages capabilities via OpenNTF. So, go ahead and get those things, log in and start coding. Enablement. So there's a number of various articles and videos that you can get through the Bluemix blog on DeveloperWorks. There's a webcast where we went into much greater detail that was done back in July. You can go ahead and watch that replay. For feedback, there's free forum support. Once again, this is an experimental service. It's not, ready for production. Things can change, at any point. So obviously, keep that in mind. You can go to this forum here to ask questions and see, questions and answers that have already been placed in that forum. And please tag those with those appropriate tags so they show up when people do searching in that forum. So one last thing I just wanted to make you aware of. If you go to the last slide, Howard, please, there's 2 Apple-related updates. So many of you, are running Mac. You're aware that El Capitan is coming out. Right now, the Notes client does not support El Capitan because they're restricting you to only 64-bit applications. And right now, as you know, the Notes client is a 32-bit application. So we're working on a 64-bit version of Notes for Mac, and that should be delivered, pretty much in line with the availability of El Capitan. And in conjunction with that, we have IBM Client Application Access, formerly known as Notes Browser Plugin, will be released at the same time. And then there's one other thing that there's a new implementation here that the more recent versions of iOS, so iOS 9 and OS X 10.11 have leveraged this new capability around elliptical curve ciphers here for when access is being accessed. So this could affect, web applications being accessing a Domino server or Traveler and the like. And so what we're doing is, if you go ahead and take a look at this tech note, there's a way to work around that now, and we're also working on an interim fix for 901 FixPack 4 that will alleviate that. So take a look at that tech note if you're falling into either of these categories, and please be aware of these updates. So Howard, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give a quick update, but I think it's a lot of good, useful information for the community.
Great. Well, Pete, thanks so much for dropping into our webinar and giving us an update. We appreciate your taking the time out today. Okay, very good. Have a good day, everybody. Okay, so now we're going to turn it over to Ulrich Krause. Ulrich recently joined a company called Midpoints. Ulrich, let me switch presentation to you. And he's going to talk about a topic that, that we need to, you might want to start considering in your application development, and that is how to architect your applications to be more tolerable of changes and be able to work and set it up so that your logic is separated from the displaying the content, etc. And I'll let Ulrich go into the details here. So thanks, Ulrich, for dropping in. We're seeing your screen. I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Paul, thank you, Howard, thank you, Courtney, for having me on the webinar. And yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody attending. Oops, something's not working. Okay, so I'm a administrator and developer since 1993, so for a very long time. I started with Nodes 3 at this time. Yeah, and also, I'm an OpenF contributor. I have a recently contributed project on OpenNetDev, which is DOM Backup, which does a backup of Nodes databases while the server is up and running. And also Trigger Happy is one of my projects, and also the Help database, which is one of the most downloaded applications on OpenNTF. Yeah, right now. I'm an IBM champion. I was one of the first 50 IBM champions elected when IBM started this program in 2011. And as Howard already said, nominations are open. And if you find I deserve another round of being an IBM champion, I would appreciate any nomination from you. You might know my blog. It's Ignore.de. It covers all things of stuff like Star Trek, C++ programming, also Lotus Notes and Domino. You can follow me on Twitter and also send me an email if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer and to help if I can. So what do we want to learn? What do we want to learn today? I would like to talk a bit about the constants in life, or again a typo, and software development. A little bit about a change management process and software maintenance. Then we go over and look into code quality, which leads us to using design patterns in general. And in particular, it's about the model view controller basics I want to introduce you to. And I have a small sample, and I will also do some demonstration in the Domino Designer for Eclipse live here on this webinar to give you a better feeling what the model view controller can do for you and how you can use it in your applications, or how you can transform an existing application to using the model view controller paradigm. Wiseman once said, the only constant in life is change. So he used a few different words, but this is the most the best way for me to remember what he said. So the only constant in life is change. So everybody of you might know this. So what would be life without any changes? It would be boring. And also, as Howard mentioned, there is a change in my life, in my work life. So from November on, I will join Midpoints in Germany, and I will leave BCC, and all my colleagues at BCC who are listening right now, it was an honor to work with you and great to work with you. And we will see, yeah, on some conferences, or when I'm in Frankfurt, back in Frankfurt again, we can meet again. So what is true for life? So the only constant in life is change. This is also true for software development. This is also what you might know. You have a program, you have a application or a set of databases, and people are constantly asking for changes, adding new features, or just maintain existing features, enhance them in some way. So it's constantly changing. And if you are working for a well-organized organization or company, you might have a so-called change management process in place. So it all starts with a request for change, and then you should analyze the impact of this change. So it might not be clear at the beginning. It might be a small change, but it can lead to various issues when you implement the change, because you did not do any impact analysis before. And yeah, you have to get it approved or denied. So this would be in an ideal world. You would send in a change request, which is analyzed and then approved or denied. Then you start to code your changes and to implement the changes. And in the end, there's a review and a reporting. So was this change implemented the way it was meant to be, or do we have to go into another iteration? So which leads to another or which results into another request for change. This is the ideal world. I have seen so many situations where we go straight from point 1 to point 4 and then do some iterations before we have the success or the result we want to have. So as I said, this is the ideal world. But this change management process is one part of software quality. You have to have such a change management process in place to produce, to have an output of good software. So software quality, what does it mean? There are several factors in software quality, and I have just listed a couple of them. There are more, like security, for example, as well, but I want to concentrate on these 6. So first is functionality. This means, are all the required functions available in the software? Is it feature complete? Or do we have buttons when we click on it, just a message box pops up and says work in progress or something like this, or not implemented or whatever, you name it. Also reliability. How reliable is the software? Does it crash all the time? Does it crash your server? Does it crash your client? Does it crash other applications that are running on the same computer as well? Is it stable? Portability. This is very important if you are not so much on the client side, but if you are working on the server side, as I did a lot at BCC. So I was working on the admin tool, and we had this for also the DB tool, and we had this for Linux, RX, and Windows in 32 and 46-bit flavor. So you have to build your code, you have to write your code so it is portable from one system to the other. Efficiency, how efficient is the software? It's just a bloated software that has features all over, but does not is very helpful for the user. So is the user really enabled with this software to do his work in an efficient way? And of course, usability. Is it easy to use? You all might know, or all have been, I'm sure, to the Passport Advantage site. To find a download package is sometimes not that easy. So this is an example of bad usability for me. And also maintainability. How easy is it to modify the software? But not only to modify the software. Think about leaving an organization or joining as a new employee, join a new company and go into development and say, okay, where's your code? What can I do for you? Show me your code. How easy is it for you to get the idea what these guys are doing at the new company? And also, if you are leaving a company and you have worked for years on code, how easy is it for others to grab your code and to start working with the code? Does it take hours? Does it take days? Or does it take years to understand what you have done? So these are the 6 factors in software quality, and there are also 2 perspectives I would like to point you to. So the first one is the user perspective. I blurred out the non-relevant topics for the user perspective. So from the user point of view, functionality, reliability, usability, and efficiency are very important. And the second one is the designer or developer perspective, and here it is portability and maintainability. I already spoke about portability and maintainability, and should keep this in mind if you look at the software quality parameters or factors, that there are different perspectives for both the developer and the user. Software, it's not for free. It's not like open source. If you're working in a company that sells software, it costs a lot of money to develop software. So what we have here is a overview. The source is from Digital Aggregates, And it says, okay, or if you look at this slide, you will see that 2/3 of the overall software lifecycle costs are going into maintenance. So this does not only mean fixing bugs or defects, but also developing the software from scratch, or implementing new features or modifying existing features. The rest is also the rest, the 1/3 that is left, is also costs. But if you look into, for example, 2% of requirements, it's just a little part of the overall cost. The main part is maintenance. So what are the challenges with existing software? So challenges with existing software are mostly in historically grown applications. I started to work with Lotus Notes and Domino in 1993, and I know that at least at one company there is a database in place that is now 15 years old. And it has some code in it from IBM, from other developers before I joined the company, and also code I put into the these applications. And yeah, it has been developed with Lotus Notes 4.5, I guess, and then now it's running on Notes and Domino 9.01. And the problem with historically grown applications is that the code can be anywhere in the application. So you have forms, you have view events or form events, you have buttons, you have hotspots, libraries, and so on, you name it. And also within one application that's really great in the Notes and Domino world, you can use different languages. So you have Lotus Script at Formula, JavaScript, Java, and if you're more advanced, you're working with Lotus Script to Java Bridge, or you have a Lotus Script to C API experience. Also simple actions and HTML. So Lotus Script to C API can be in the database itself. You might know these declare statements in the code, but it can also mean that you have an external DLL that you use that wraps some code that you would like to use in your application, but Lotus Notes and Domino does not have this functionality built in. So also different places, different languages can lead to redundancies. So the same code maybe in one button or in another button. There was a time where people used these shared actions, but shared actions are a different topic. And yeah, I'm not sure if shared actions was a good way to go, because it leads to other problems during the software development process and also in runtime. So if you decided to use different buttons, you might have a copy of a button, then slightly modify the code, and you have most of the code, 99% of the code is the same, but 1% changes, but you have redundant code in it, and it's very hard to maintain and to find bugs and such. And also different programming styles. So each programmer has its own style to do. And this leads to very, very confusing code sometimes, and not easy to maintain. So one possible solution is to separate the front end from the back end code. IBM has done this, or Iris has done this in the beginning with having the Notes document, for example, and the Notes UI document classes, which makes clear that one is for the back end and one is just for the front end. So this is just one way to do it. I found a tweet which says the only way to write good code is to write tons of bad code. So this might also be the reason why you find so many samples of bad code on the internet, because it's millions of lines of code that is bad and just a few of them are good. But it does not necessarily mean that it is real bad code. I would like to give you a little example. So look at this code. It says, so this is from C. It's not Lotus Script, nor it is Java or such. If state.code equals 4, do something. Okay, great. When I start with this code, I look at this code and say, okay, what does 4 mean? How many states do we have, or code do we have? They say step 4. Okay, I've learned I should comment my code. So let's see if this makes a difference. Not much. I now know it is a final state. Okay. So just a slight modification makes this code more readable and better. And this is if state is final. So in the early days of programming, one avoided to have an additional property in the class, state class, just for memory reasons, just to not duplicate a already available property that was the code property. But nowadays, it's easy to have this enhancement in a class as well, so it does not cost a lot of memory, it does not cost a lot of performance, but it makes clear that it makes the code more readable. Another example is this one. This is valid code. I tried this yesterday. This is valid code. It's code chaining. I have seen so many places, so many programmers using code chaining. I'm not quite sure why. Is it just it looks better, it looks more professional? In my mind, it does not, because you can easily see that it is working code, okay, but there is no error handling in it or such, and it's really hard to maintain this code. It's really hard to enhance this code, and if you deal with a lot of such code examples, or if you have a lot of these examples in your own code, you know you have a problem. So what can we do? First of all, say goodbye to sequential programming. So that's the first one. Second is use more procedural programming, or at the very best, or even better, use object-oriented programming. You can do this in Lotus Script, you can do this, or you will do this probably in Java, which forces you more to use object-oriented models than Lotus Script does. And yeah, while we are talking about object-oriented programming, it's just a small step to come to the topic of this presentation, which is about design patterns. So what are design patterns? They are best practices that a programmer can use to solve common problems when designing an application or a system. And in the object-oriented world, design patterns means or typically show the relationship and the interaction between classes or objects without specifying the final application class or object that are involved. Or in other words, it does not say, okay, you have to use this or that code. A short example, an iterator. You iterate over a document collection, for example. Yeah, you can do it in many ways. You can do it in a for loop. You can do it in a do-while way, or you can have it, if you're still working with add formulas and such, you can have the add transform formula, which also iterates over a set of documents and does some modification or stuff to it. So a group of some clever guys, it was the Gang of Four, they thought a lot of this, and they are considered the foundation of all the design patterns. They wrote a book. It's still there. It's very readable, and you should become familiar with the design patterns from the Gang of Four. The Gang of Four is not that punk band from London. It's neither. It's also not the Gang of Four that was famous or unfamous in China. It's about these four people. Lee Helm is one of them, and I can't remember the name. I forgot to put it into the slides, but it's in the command of the slides. They formed a basic set of 23 design patterns from abstract factory to visitor, and when you look into the list, you might see some of these patterns that would sound familiar to you. I mentioned the iterator, which is in the middle of the slide. Also, you have the singleton, for example, the Lotus Notes session object is a singleton. You might also see this in the Java world as well. A facade, for example, and all such of these design patterns. And they structured it. They structured these Gang of Four guys. They structured the design patterns and categorized them. And here's the category. So design patterns can create objects. They can have a can be a structural pattern or a behavioral pattern as well. And this is what you have here in this slide. When you see the S, the C, and the B, this represents these categories, these types. This is not a static set of design patterns. This is just the starting point, the 23 Gang of Four design patterns. And design patterns evolved over the years. And first of all, we have seen what design patterns are, but we should also mention what design patterns are not. They're not a finished design that can be directly transformed into source or machine code, and they're not a code snippet that can be copied into your code. You might see some samples on the net which are actually code, and you copy and paste it, but the design patterns described in this book from the Gang of Four, they're not code. They're just a description of how to solve a problem. So as I said before, the design patterns evolved over the years, and some additions have been made to them. And one of them is the model view controller. The model view controller was one of the first patterns that described how to implement software constructs in terms of their responsibility. And Mr. Rinskog, I can't pronounce his first name, introduced this model view controller in the 1970s of the last century. And in 1980, Jim Althoff and others implemented the first version of the MVC. Also, there is a article still available on the internet. The link is in the notes of this presentation. A cookbook for using the model view controller in Smalltalk 80, which is another programming language, and it's interesting to read it to see what was their thoughts about how to implement this model view controller paradigm in 1988, which is a couple of years ago. So the father of MVC, I said, it's Mr. Heyerdahl Rinskog. He was born 1930, so a very experienced man. I wouldn't say old. Looking at my own age, and he formed this model view controller pattern for graphic user interfaces in 1979 while he was at the Xero Palo Alto Research Center. This is not what I've learned at school. I learned it from Wikipedia, and you can follow the Wikipedia article, a link at the bottom of this slide to read more about this fantastic guy. So why should we use such design patterns? So for example, a little example, a project case here. So you created a superhero web application for a local comic shop, and the owner asked you, oh, I've heard of Lotus Notes. Can we have it in a Notes database? Yeah, we can. Okay. Once you implemented it, it's a huge success, and your client is extremely satisfied. And then they start to ask for changes in the application. They've heard of some other stuff. They've heard of SQL databases. They've heard of DB2, for example, and they want, just because it's there, they want to have a different database. And of course, they heard of mobile devices, and according to the market demand, they definitely need an iOS application or an Android application. And now think about what happens when you repeat this up to 5 times. So constant changes in software development. And the client keeps asking for more modifications and expansions. And this is not only regarding the back end. It's also regarding the front end. So adding new items, new fields, new forms, new views, whatever you can think of. And think about this as a constant request from customers, and it can drive you mad at some point. If you think about the architecture of your application and you use design patterns and specifically the model view controller pattern right from the start, you will notice that some things would have been less painful, and yeah, in the end you'll be happier. The benefits of MVC, it's quite clear, because 90% of the code for a web application and a mobile application and also the client-based application will be the same. It's just a different UI in the web. It's a different UI in a mobile application, or if you use the Team Studio web elements, it's just one element to add, and it works both in the web and in the mobile application. Or if you use XPages, you can also have the XPages on the client, for example. But backend, for example, if you want to save the user data instead of an NSF, a local NSF, you want to store it in an XML file or as a JSON representation of the data, you have to implement changes. But as I said, 90% of the code still remains the same and has not to be changed, whether it is a web application, a mobile application, or a client-based application. And without using the MVC pattern, chances are pretty high that you do the modification in a bunch of classes, and this again will lead to redundant code, because I know what happens when I have to do changes. I know what happens when other developers do changes. They just copy the code and modify it, slide a bit, and yeah, you have redundant code, not 100% redundancy, but a lot of redundancy. And as I said, the same is for the UI. It's just the way that the data is presented to the user is a little bit different in the web or in the client. So what are the basic components of the model view controller? It's in the name. Okay, it's a model. It's not a pretty girl. It's a model. It's the view, and it's a controller. The model represents your data structure, and typically it will contain functions to get the data from your data source, to insert new data into the data source, and to update existing information in the data store. The view is the information that is being presented to the user, and yeah, we all know it as a page. Yeah, we show a page on the web, we show a page or form in the Notes client, and this is what a view is. And the controller serves as a part between the model and the view and other resources that needs to process the HTTP request and create the web page. So in easy words to understand, the model is the data, the view is the window on the screen, and the controller is a glue between the two. How do they interact? Oh, we have another component in this MVC model, which is necessary, I think. So it makes sense to have an application. It's a user, and now let's see how all these parts of the construct work together. So starting with the user at the bottom, the user uses the controller manipulates the model updates the view, and then it presents the changes back to the user. Now let's see how this looks like. So we have our superhero application, as is just basic stuff. It's an overview of all the superheroes. There might be more verbose lists all over the internet, but this is our application, and we can look into one data set, and it says, okay, Superman, he's an alien and his superpower is such and such, and a little description. We can also add a new one which presents a blank form, does not have a lot of usability here in this, just a basic form, and you can add new superheroes as you like. And also, if you want to delete one, just delete it, and you're done. So this is how the application would look like in the client. This was our starting point. I was asked at MW, look, do we really need all these client elements in there, like forms and views? No, we don't need them. You can start with a blank application, just implement your Java code, implement your XPages, and that's all you need. This was the starting point, and we took this application and modified or transformed it to a web application. Yeah, this is what we have already seen in the little demo. This is the overview page, and this is the detail. This is a superhero form where you can read the information for each superhero. And internally, the superhero application has a form, it has a view, and it has two XPages, the hero XPage and the overview XPage, and also a set of Java classes, which are the controller, the model, and the view. And let's start with the controller. The controller, as you can see, is a phase listener. So it listens to each action that occurs, or each event that occurs in the application, and we are interested in the before phase event, and we do some stuff there. I will explain it in a minute. So the phase listener, oh, here it is again. So the phase listener, when you open the application in the browser, and for example you navigate to the overview XSP, it takes this URL and strips out the last part, which is the overview.xsp. Then it removes the XSP and appends a bean. So the resulting object we are working with is the overview bean. So this is the first part where you see that it is, or that it will become very easy to enhance this application. By now, we only have the hero XSP and the according hero bean in our application. So if you want to have another form or another web form in your application with a different name, all you have to do is to create the XPage for this additional form, and also have in the view package, ignore.view package, you have to create another bean with the same name but the bean extension in it, and this is all you have to do. You don't have to modify the controller at this point. It's just adding the XPage and adding the bean. That's all you have to do to enhance the application if you want to have more functionality, different views, different forms in your application. The application and the phase listener, so the app controller, is registered in the phases config XML. You see at the bottom, you see the lifecycle section. This is where the application controller is registered, and then once the application is opened in the browser, it listens to all the events that occurs in the application, and exactly does what I described before. So analyzes the URL and invokes the according bean, so the application knows what to do at this point. Let's take a look at the XSP, at the X page for the overview. What you might see here is that we do not have any traditional data binding like a data source in it. All what we have is a table which represents the layout we have seen, and within the table we have different different items that all get the data binding from the underlying page object. So the overview bean is put into the page, and then this overview, this page object has, for example, the method of getting all heroes, and this is what works as an input for the repeat control, and then it displays all the heroes that are currently in the database in the overview page. Same for the hero XSP. Also here you do not see any data binding, any traditional data binding like having a data source that points to a server or points to a database on that server, but you see page model species, page model name, for example. This is where the data comes from. It all comes from the underlying bean when this hero XSP is displayed in the browser. This is the Java code behind the overview bean here in this example, and we have a get all heroes and get hero by ID, and get an instant of a hero. And also for the hero itself, it has some private and public properties like the ID, species name, descriptor power, and such. And you might see from the code if you want to add additional properties you want to display. It's very easy just to have a new property in this bean, and then generate the according getters and setters for that, and just add additional XPages statements in your XSP, and that's all you have to do. So it's very easy to enhance or modify the existing application. There's also a so-called data access object that I use in my application, and a data access object. This is an object that provides an abstract interface to some type of database or other data store, and all the read and write operations that occur in the database itself are delegated to this data access object. So at no point during the runtime, other parts of the application have a direct access to the underlying data store. So to show this here, by the way, I'm using a tool which you can integrate in Domino Designer for Eclipse. When you go to the architecture.com site, it's free. It's not open source, but it's free to use. But you can also have a paid version of it. But for our purposes, it's completely enough to use the free version. You can integrate it in Domino Designer. It works in 8.5.3 and also works in 9.01. And this will give you a great overview about what is going on in your application in terms of relationship between beans, methods in this beans or properties, and where they are used, and who uses which property from which bean in your application. So this is a visualization of the overview and the hero bean, and it shows how it accesses the data access object NSF, which I use to access the data in my NSF file, apparently. And you can easily see that neither the hero nor the overview bean has other access to the application other than the displayed arrows here. So the get all heroes from the overview bean accesses the get all heroes in the data access object NSF file. So as I said, at no point at the runtime the other objects other than the data access object has access to the data itself. All read-write actions are delegated. So when it comes to changes, there is also two perspectives. The management view, and they say, okay, I don't care if it is XML, if it is JSON, if it is whatever database you have, you are using such strange words, I just want to have my data stored. Anyway, I don't care where it is, just present me the data, just make it happen. And they are very relaxed when saying that, and you as a developer might look more like this. So changes, very complicated, have to do here, there, blah, blah, blah. In our example, so we already have the DAO NSF, and let's say, okay, we want to have another method of accessing or another data store, which can be an XML file, for example. So yeah, let's make a copy of it and call it DAO XML, and that's it, and modify it slightly, and yeah, then we have our different data store to access. So this is what you need. How can we achieve that? We need some kind of interface for our purposes. An interface in the Java programming language is an abstract type that is that specifies which classes have to be or must be implemented, and it's using the interface keyword, of course, and it only contains the method signatures and constant declarations. So when you look into the interface, we will do this in a minute. We do not see any functional code in this interface. It's just the function headers and all this stuff. So how can we create an interface from an existing class? This is on the left side. We see what is in our example. So we have the overview, we have the hero bean, and we have the DAO NSF. And the Domino designer for Eclipse is a great help in this case. So it has a refactor method or refactor function. And you just select the DAO NSF Java, right-click it, and then you go to refactor and extract interface. You will be presented with a dialog, and you give it a name, and this is also a naming convention I found on the web. So DAO with a capital I for interface. Then you have to, it's not pre-selected, you have to select all the members that should be declared in the interface. So ideally you click on the select all, and then all your methods are selected, and if you have properties as well, they're also selected. Then click OK, and yeah, this is the resulting interface you now have, and as you can see, it has all the pre-selected methods. And what else does it do? Oh, this is how it looks like. As I said, it's just a description of the function of the methods, no functional code in it. And also what it does, it automatically or automagically does the necessary changes to your code. And we use the DAO NSF in two places in this application. In the DAO NSF itself, for instance, there is, as you can see, I'm not sure if my cursor is visible on the presentation here, but the DAO interface is added to the implements statement on the class declaration. And also in the overview bean, there is a slightly change in the code from using the DAO NSF explicitly to using DAO interface, and also in the public get DAO, you also see the changes from the DAO NSF to DAO interface. That's all the changes that have been done by the Domino designer itself. No manual process from your point. That's all you have to do. The application will work right the way it did before, without any further changes. So now we have the interface, and now we want to create a new class, which is the DAO XML class. And yeah, you start from create other new class, then you get presented a new dialog where you just type in the name for the new class, which is DAO XML, and then in the interfaces section, click the add button, and you are presented with another drop-down dialog box, which contains all the available interfaces. In our sample, it's only the data access object interface. You select it and then click finish, and that's all. And in the package explorer, you will see a new class, the DAO XML Java, which then contains a stub of your class. So it copies all the functions, all the function declarations into the new class, and all you have to do at this point is to put in the functional code to work with XML instead of a nodes data store instead. I'm using for this sample, I'm using a very basic XML file. It's just squad and hero, and with a description, the ID, name, power, and species. And yeah, you can put it on the server into any directory that is accessible by the server. It has to be read-write, of course, because you want to make changes to it, but you can have it elsewhere, anywhere on the server. Just the server has to find its way to it. So, and then when you want to make a change, so depending on which data source you want to use, you just have to change one line in your code. That's all you have to do. So change from using the DAO NSF data access object to DAO XML instead. That's all you have to do. And yeah, let me show this in another example. So let me do this live. So what we hear, the example 2 is a copy of the example 1. So it contains the identical code, and then I do what I've shown in the slides before. So refactor, extract the interface, give it a name, select all, do this. See, you have it now. You have the DAO interface here, and it also has changed the code here. When we go here and click on demo 2, you see it is still working, no further changes, but we do not have the XML in place now. So let's do it here, new class. XML, then what is wrong here? Yikes. Here it is. And finish. And now you have this stub. So I do not want to copy code around here. I switch to my final database where I already have done the necessary changes. So in the XML, you see now we have some life in this stub methods, so dealing with writing XML file and removing a hero and so on, and reading all the stuff from the XML file. And then we can change. So this still comes from the NSF, and I just show you here. So you see the same stuff in here. So it's 5 entries. And we comment this out. We remove the comment here. So it's now using the XML file, which is stored on the server in the data directory, which is called heroes XML. And when we do a refresh here, you see only one is in the XML file. Believe me, it is the XML file that is accessed, and you can put in. Oh, it's not. And save it, and so you see you have the second in the XML file. You see how easy it is to make a change to the underlying data store when you use such a model, when you have structured code. Yeah. And I think this is almost all. As I said, architecture helps you to understand and to document large and complex code bases. And there's also a link to design patterns in Java tutorial and a little bit about the Gang of Four. I will add more links. I doubt that they are visible in the PDF that you can download from the TLCC site or from SlideShare or wherever I put it in. I will put it into the last slide so you can, for your convenience, just to click it and get the needed information. Yeah, that's all from my in my presentation. And yeah, there is questions and answers now. And thank you for listening. Once again, thank you TLCC and Team Studio for having me. And yeah, I give back to Howard.
Yeah, I got it, Ulrich. You're all set.
Oh, okay, you got it. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, well, thank you, Ulrich. It was definitely another path on our evolution from being our notes programmers with sequential logic that we've all started off with to moving to more of a true object-oriented life, I guess you could say.
Just to mention this using this MVC or any of the design patterns is completely independent if you are using XPages or any other construct in the Notes and Domino world. You can also use it for Lotus Script, for example, or if you're doing so with C, C++ as well.
Actually, that kind of brings us to our first question from Andre. Let me read his question, Ulrich. Actually, 2 questions here. Cramming MVC into a Domino app makes me feel like writing pure JSF and Java code, which I guess is true. Am I wrong, or are we using the NSF as a document repository only? Question. If so, why not take advantage of a real Java application server like JBoss or WebSphere?
Well, when I started with XPages application development, I did it the classic way of having XSP and custom controls and such. And quickly I recognized when it comes to more mature, more sophisticated applications, it's yeah, you quickly evolve to do it in Java development. Having the data in the NSF container is a great way because you benefit from all the security on the Domino server itself. If you would do it on a WebSphere Liberty, for example, you have to implement all this security stuff by yourself. If you can do it, it's great. If you can't do it, better stay with the Domino data.
Well, I think another advantage to Ulrich might be, for folks who are just getting into web development, you can take advantage in XPages of the Bootstrap themes and things like that to put the UI on your information and not have to, you know, code all that HTML and so that, you know, I think that kind of helps too with the, you know, for those of us who are just kind of getting started in some of those technologies, helps with building that UI that we can then, you know, interface that with the Java, the data coming from the Java controller.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with a lot of data, if you have plenty of records in your NSF, it does not make sense to do this with server-side JavaScript because it's terribly slow, and you need to do Java at this point to make your application performant.
Okay, I have a question from Gary for you, and Gary's wondering, in that example, the XML backend data, is that now disconnected from the Lotus database security? I think you referred to this in your last answer, but if you could just clarify.
Yes, it is. It is a file on the file system under the Domino data directory, but to access this data, so nobody would let you access the server, so you can change the XML on the file level. So all the other changes are still done using the application itself, and this application has security, so it has an ACL, or you can have security on the XSP as well. So just make sure nobody can access the server file system at this point to change the data. It's just a simple example. You can also have a SQL database as a data store behind. So XML is just an easy example, or JSON, or whatever you have.
Okay, got a question from Henry Newberry, otherwise known as Noobs. When you have more types of data, such as companies and people, how would you name the data, the DAO classes, the data access object?
More types of data. So this is what I said. We have the hero and the according hero bean. So if I have people groups, for example, I would name it people and people bean, groups group bean. In my opinion, it does not have to do with the data access object. The data access object just is the central point, which is the interface to the underlying data store, regardless which kind of document or which kind of object is accessing this data store.
So in the data access object, you might just have one of those, but then you might say get all people or get all groups and put all your methods in there that then go out and talk to the actual like DAO NSF methods.
Yes, sure, right. So what we have here with get all heroes, I would have a get all people, get all groups, get all databases, get all mail-in databases, or so.
Yeah, person by name or whatever.
Sure, you have to write more functionality into your data access object, but you do not have to have different data access object for each object type. You can have if you want, but I think this makes the application more complex and leads to a lot of confusion. So have it as a central point of access to your underlying data store, but have as many functions and many methods in it, whatever you like for any object.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, good question, Henry, and good response. Paul, you got another?
Yeah, I have a question from Richard. How many view entries? That's not the question that I was looking at. Here we are. How many view entries can you load into the Javabean? Did you just do this one?
No, I didn't. No, go ahead.
Okay. Load into the Javabean and still have a responsive application?
That's a good question. I think it depends a little bit on the underlying hardware, and this is what Howard will talk about in the XPages performance webinar, in short. Yeah, from my practical experience, we dealt with hundreds and from hundreds up to 10,000 up to 100,000 data records in a bean, and Yeah, well, it depends a little bit on the underlying hardware. It depends a little bit on the available memory, but 10,000, 20, 30, 80,000 is not a problem.
Yes,
It's
no,
the problem is not reading the data, having the data stored in memory, but displaying the data to the user. So the heavy lifting has to be done in the presentation layer, where it comes to having a grid or building the view from a repeat control. How fast is this? It's not so much in the data bean. No.
Yeah, there is a setting to control the amount of memory your JVM uses. I think it's HTTP JVM something heap size. And so that would be a setting you'd want to play with as well as monitor the memory using the XPages toolbox. And as you said, Ulrich, we'll be talking about that next month and how to use that tool. We've got a question from Roberto. Can you explain the lifecycle tag in faces config? And also, Ulrich, you refer to some of your Java classes as a bean, but a lot of people might be kind of thinking managed bean. Maybe you could also touch on the difference between your use of the term bean versus the managed bean that people might be familiar with when they do put beans in their faces config.
Yeah, okay. So the main difference from this point of view between a bean and a managed bean is a bean, a classic bean object is not, you don't have an entry in the faces config XML for a bean object, but for a managed bean, you have to have such an entry. Is that for the first part? That's okay?
Yeah, that was part, and then the lifecycle part of the.
Oh, the lifecycle tag. So you need an explanation of that?
If you could maybe review that real quick, or if you want to explain a little bit about how that, when that class, Java class in the lifecycle gets called, or how that relates to the application. In terms of
okay. So you have to write your bean for that, and then you have to put the according entry with a lifecycle entity in the faces config XML, and yeah, it's like if you're familiar with the extension manager, for example, on the Domino side, it's similar to that. So it listens to requests, it listens to events that occur in the application, and this can be all you can have in the lifecycle. It can before something occurred, after something occurred, or validation or whatever. This is all in this underlying object. What I did in this particular example, I just make use of the before render response event. This is just one thing you can have in this face listener.
So basically, your code was just looking for the before render response event, and then that's when it runs to set up the corresponding controlling bean for that page.
Right. Yeah. This is the only event that is interesting at this point. Just to translate the submitted XSP into the underlying bean.
To tie it together.
Yeah, to tie it together, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the resulting object. So I didn't mention that. So if you have the overview XSP and you glue it together to the overview bean, this is put into a view scope variable, which then is used. Which then is accessed by the code in the XSP itself. So every time you change from the overview XSP to the hero XSP, the object in the view scope, which is still the same, is different. At one point it is the overview bean, at the other point it's the hero bean.
Okay.
Yeah, you got a comment from Roberto saying thank you, so I think you got that. I do have another question here from James, and James has an application with multiple NSF data sources. So can this MVC design be used to bring all of that data together?
Yeah, sure. Sure, it can.
Let me vary that question. Is it necessary Meaning, why not just bring it together as an XPage application? With an XPage application, you can pick off data sources from different NSFs. Do we need the MVC design pattern?
Well, if you have a well-designed application, you might not need this MVC pattern. But as I said, the benefits are clear. So using these design patterns, MVC in particular, forces you to think about the architecture of your application. So what if you have another application added to the set of application you already have? You have to make changes to several XPages or custom controls, and if you have it all centralized in these data access object, which can handle different applications or different databases on different servers as well as only one